And we move from the understatement of the year to the next tag team match. Chris Jericho and Sammy Hagar against Private Party. Chris Jericho and Sammy Hagar, part of Inner Circle. The Le Champion, the top mainstream star in the company, former champion, top heel, and his partner, the Muscle, the backup, Bellator MMA cage fighter. On this program, they have been portrayed as one guy who got dumped in a vat of orange juice by a guy who ought to be changing oil at Jiffy Lube, and the other guy got beat up by Sonny Kiss. And these are the top heels. And they're now going into a tag team match with Private Party. And this is the problem I've had with Jericho, and we've talked about it. Instead of doing his shit, leading them and teaching them something, he's trying to prove he's a young fella and he's doing their shit. And then it all falls apart. And people, when I say Hager's so green, on Twitter, they've been saying, well, he's been wrestling for 10 years or whatever. Well, he still needs to learn to think like a top guy. He still needs to learn to move like a top guy. And he still needs to learn to work like a top guy. He's green. His shit needs work. 10 years isn't that long to begin with. And most of it was in the WWE. And what for the past, several years has been part-time. So yes, he's talented and he's got size and he's got credibility. But he needs a lot of work because he's green in how he thinks, especially on his feet. And then I wrote, by the way, this is another one of my fucking notes. As soon as I wrote that, Hager set up simultaneous cold tags and killed the whole heat on Mark Quinn. They got heat on Mark Quinn first because it was a Private Party are natural athletes, but they're not natural workers. And it got better when they cut Mark Quinn off for the heat and slowed it down and the heels were in control. But then, like I said, Hager killed that whole thing when he set up simultaneous cold tags for no fucking reason. Horrible comeback by Cassidy, which consisted of this. a modified Thez press springboard off the top where he just basically sat on fucking Jericho's chest, drop kicked Hager in the shin, ducked Jericho's clothesline, and did a springboard backflip into a 2 count. That was the entire comeback, and then lost all the momentum. And then started doing some other shit and got backdropped over. Then they went to something else. Rotten comeback. When a babyface has sold and sets up his partner for the tag and makes that tag, it should be, as we've mentioned so many times, when all hope looks lost and there's almost no way he can get that tag, and suddenly he does, and now the fresh man is in. And the heels have to do 2 things at the same time. They've got to feed that baby face and still look like they're putting the brakes on because they're scared of him. And they got to be in the right position. And the first thing the baby face does or should do is punch that fucking heel in the mouth. Not duck and dodge. I used to have this in OVW 20 years ago. Guys who get a hot tag, and they jump in and duck and go running and doing a spot that would go to a cross body and something and all this pretty shit. No. The first thing the people want to see from a baby face on a hot tag is to come in and punch the fucking heel square in the fucking face. And then the other one. And then the first one again. And then the next one. If you can't throw a punch, forearm, strikes. Strikes is what they want to see, and they take a bump or 2 on the strikes. Then you shoot them, then you run them, then you backdrop, then you drop kick. That's then you bring in the higher impact bumps and leaping moves, and then finally you hit a fucking finish. Cover 1, 2, and maybe the partner makes a save. That's a babyface comeback. You start violent, you're uncorked, you're getting even. Then you pull out big moves. Then you try to beat one of them, the other one has to come in. And then you can continue it from there. You can do whatever, but that's a comeback, not ducking and dodging and doing some pretty sissy shit. Fuck. And the heels have to feed. Don't go to them. If you go to them, they're doing a shit job of being heels, and it's killed your comeback to begin with. Then they cut Cassidy off and went to the break. So they come back. Now they're getting heat on Cassidy. This is going to be another ridiculously long match. with 2 sets of heat. We didn't do 2 sets of heat in most of the matches with the Rock and Roll Express. You pull that out every once in a while when you have to go long and it's between 2 great fucking teams. Private Party can barely get 1 set of heat and a comeback down. You're giving them 2. Hager used that ridiculous head palm shoot off, and I'm about done with him too. Private Party did some kind of screwy double flip where they were, the guy that was selling, Cassidy, then hung over the top rope and cooperated with his partner to do a double thing that dropped Hager, and then Cassidy went back to selling. Then they did another simultaneous cold tag in the exact same way. They did the same thing wrong the same way twice in the same match. I was gobsmacked that Chris Jericho was involved in this. However, at least Mark Quinn's comeback was much better because Jericho fed him and he bumped Hager out. But then instead of, he makes a comeback. Jericho's legal. Jericho feeds him. Boom, boom, boom. Then he gives Hager the big bump out. And instead of staying in the ring to beat the legal guy, he then runs across the ring, hits the ropes, and does a dive outside over the top on Hager that can do him no good whatsoever. Then he gets in the ring and gets a fucking false finish on Jericho for a 2 count. Well, he should have done that a minute ago. He might have won. Then the Private Party did another tag. And they hit Jericho with more shit. And I'm writing, go home for fuck's sake. Then Hager and Mark Quinn go to the floor. Cassidy hits Jericho with more shit. Then Hager and Mark Quinn go to the floor and completely disappear. You never see him on camera again. You never see him selling. You never see him trying to climb back in the ring. They're just gone. They entered the 5th dimension with Marilyn McCoo and Billy Davis Jr. And then Cassidy missed something off the top rope and Jericho hit the Judas. Why even have the tag match when partners have to disappear because your shit's so overly complicated and you're doing too much and it's taking so much time that you can't even do it while your partners are selling? They've got to completely go away. Too much shit in this, too sloppy. It was a mess. And then Jericho puts Cassidy in the walls of Jericho, and Mark Quinn saves by knocking Jericho goofy. So they actually did get some heat on the top heels over the fucking middle card tag team. And then one of them comes back and just knocks out the main star. This was rotten and helped nobody. I yield to your thoughts.
I can't really add too much to that. I have not liked Jericho and Hager as a tag team. I don't know why they're in the tag team division. Despite all the issues with Chris Jericho's work in 2020, he's still one of those guys that should be elevated in the singles division, notwithstanding the program with Orange Cassidy. There has to be something better you can do than this. I didn't really care much for the match.
And that's all these fans out there that buy the drivel that these goofuses straight off the indies feed them, think, oh, it's so great that Jericho and Hager were trying to do something to help Private Party out and get them over. They think this is it. This ain't it. You don't get anybody over this way having shit like this, especially on television.